Hi, I'm Lisa Turner with Bauman College of Holistic Nutrition and Culinary Arts, and today I'm going to show you how to make cake in a jar. Aren't these cute? Now, besides the fact that they're adorable, they make great holiday gifts because they're very small, and nobody really needs another whole cake in the middle of December. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'll start by oiling 4 half-pint size canning jars. You're going to bake the cake right in the jar. So you can pretty much use any kind of cake batter or cake recipe for this that you'd like. When you fill it up, you're only going to fill the jars about 2/3 of the way full. And what's really fun is to make 2 or 3 different kinds of cakes. And then you can give everybody on your list 2 or 3 different cakes in these little half sizes so they can have a sample of a lot of different things. And you want to oil these fairly generously, because you want to make sure that the cake doesn't stick to the jar when it's trying to come out. Now once I've done that, in a large bowl I'm going to combine 1 cup of gluten-free flour. You can use any kind of gluten-free flour that you'd like for this. I am using a blend of quinoa and oat flour. And the reason I'm using gluten-free is that so many people have gluten intolerance now that if I don't have to use a wheat flour, I don't. It just doesn't make any sense because there are a lot of good alternatives. So I'm going to put in 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder, and about 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And I'll whisk that together until it's blended well. I'm going to put in a variety of spices here. So what I'm using in this is some holiday spices like cardamom, cinnamon, nutmeg, and a big generous pinch of cloves. I'm using about 1/2 teaspoon each of the spices. Now once that's blended, I'm going to take a separate bowl and I'm going to use coconut oil as my oil for this. And the reason why is that coconut oil is going to give it a nice rich flavor in much the same way that butter does, but it's non-dairy, so anybody who is sensitive to dairy can also enjoy this cake. Now I'll show you a little trick. I'm going to use honey for my sweetener. And you know how when you put honey in the cup and you can never get it out? Well, if you put the oil in first, and then you pour the honey into the jar. It is very cold outside today, and this honey is moving really slowly. And then if you put the coconut oil in first, then the honey just comes right out. And then once I have the honey and the coconut oil in here, I'm going to cream it together in much the same way that you would do with butter and sugar. So the reason I'm using honey is I like raw, unfiltered honey because it's about as unprocessed a sweetener as you can get. And I'll just cream this together until it starts to get light and fluffy. And you'll start with about a low speed on that. Once that's blended together nice and light and fluffy, then you'll put in 2 eggs, 1/3 cup of coconut milk. And again, I'm using coconut milk and coconut oil because it adds that rich flavor in much the same way that butter does. And then I'll put in 1 teaspoon of vanilla. And then you'll beat this for about 5 minutes until it's really smooth. And you'll stop from time to time and you'll scrape down the sides of the bowl with the spatula so you make sure that you get everything in there. Now once those ingredients are mixed together very well, you're going to pour the wet ingredients into the dry. So we'll go back to the flour. And I'm going to use a rubber spatula to mix so that I can get it all blended together very well. You don't want to overmix this because it tends to make the batter tough. So you're going to stir it just until it's combined. Now you'll notice when I was making this, I did not use very much honey. And that's because I'm going to use some apples. I'll add about 1 large apple And I've peeled it and diced it very small. And I'm also going to add some raisins. So I use dried fruit and whole fruit whenever possible in baking recipes because it adds extra sweetness so you don't have to use as much sugar or honey. And I'm also going to add a half a cup of finely chopped pecans. And again, you're going to blend it just until it's blended in. Now, once that's done, we're going to fill the jars. You're only going to fill these about maybe 2/3 of the way full because they're going to expand a lot when they're baking. Now, I'm only making 4 today, but when you make this recipe, you can easily double it if you want to make a larger batch. And again, you can use whatever cake recipe you'd like and just fill these jars, as long as they're just filled about 2/3 of the way full. Now we're getting down to the end here on our batter, so I'm going to switch to a spatula. And you can just get a case of jelly jars. At this time of year, hard to get it at the grocery stores. But you can get it at most hardware stores. And they're not expensive. You can get a whole case of them. So if you get a couple of cases, you can make holiday gifts for just about everybody on your list. And again, this cake is gluten-free. It does have eggs, but it is dairy-free. So if you have anybody with food allergies on your list, this cake's going to be great for them. Now I'm taking a paper towel and I'm just wiping off the little spills around the edge, so when it bakes it's just prettier. You also want to be able to get a clean seal on the edge of the jar. Now, you've probably seen on the internet all those recipes for baking cakes in the large mason jars and then sealing them and having them be shelf stable for a very long time. I don't do that. I don't like baking in the large mason jars because they're so big that it takes a lot longer to bake. The inside may not always get done to food safe temperatures. And also when they're in the oven for longer, you just increase the risk of the glasses cracking and breaking. Now once I have all these filled, I'm going to put them on a baking sheet. And I put them in the oven. And you'll bake this at 350 for about 25 minutes. So our cake should be done now. And you can see how they're slightly puffed on top and they pulled away from the sides of the pan. And then once they've cooled down all the way, make sure that they're completely cool. Put the lids on them. If you put the lids on too soon, you'll get condensation and the top of the cake will get soft. Once you put the lids on and they're cooled down, you can decorate them. In this one, I've just put some raffia around the top. You can use kitchen twine or ribbon. You can put a little tag on. Put the name of the cake, if you'd like, on a label on the top. And that is how you make cake in a jar. I'm Lisa Turner with Bauman College. I hope you have a wonderful holiday.